Hi everyone, Gary Colesill here, and yes, you are in the right place. We are going to be talking today about how to pay for college without going broke. That's a good goal, I would think. Anyway, we're very lucky today to have with us Scott Rulon from Rulon Financial in the great city of Phoenix, who's going to be telling us just that, how you can get grants, money for college, loans for college, and still have some money left, hopefully. Anyway, without much further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Scott. Thanks for being here. And Scott, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Gary. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different. Gary, how do you like the idea of the government paying for part of your son or daughter's education?
That sounds like a good plan to me. I like the idea of that.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk a little bit about there is a couple of tax credits available from the IRS or the U.S. government as a way to pay for your children's college. And I'm also going to tell you another way, and maybe we'll start off with that one. That is, did you know that some employers have a fringe benefit that they will pay part of the education for you?
Well, I know that Starbucks did something. I don't know if they still do it. A few years back, where they were paying for online courses, I believe. I'm not quite sure how that worked, but yeah, so again, sounds good to me.
Yeah, so I mean, I can tell you that so as an example, my son works at a company called Intel. I'm sure most of you have heard of that. But what you may not have known is some of those companies will actually pay for a master's or a doctorate degree. Um, there are some companies that really appreciate the value of education. And when it comes to moving up, they require some extra education. And so, as an example, Intel is actually one of those companies that actually helps pay for your master's degree if you want to do it. So if you work for a large employer, maybe like an Intel or an AT&T or a Merck or something like that, you might want to see if they have any fringe benefits. A lot of times, those fringe benefits were like up to $5,000. And the beautiful thing is, it's a tax-free fringe benefit. So you don't have to pay any tax on the money you received for the education. So that's a pretty interesting deal there.
Yeah, it's good
But
stuff.
yeah, but let's move on to what is called the American Opportunity Credit. That's a fancy name for saying the government is going to help pay for part of your student's education. And so there's a couple ways that we can look at this. Most important is if your student who's in school, and this is undergraduate education, receives something called a 1098T, you are probably in play for getting one of these credits. The thing that I see happen sometimes is mom or dad makes too much money. And when mom or dad makes too much money, that can knock them out of the ability to get the American Opportunity Credit. So the beauty of the American Opportunity Credit is they will give you a dollar for dollar tax credit. A dollar for dollar tax credit means for each dollar of credit, that wipes out an extra dollar of tax. That's a wonderful thing. And so if mom or dad makes too much money for the American Opportunity Credit, I would suggest that the student, as long as they have a job, file on their own. with the loss of the dependent exemptions a few years ago, it really wasn't as important to claim your children anymore. So if your child has a job and they get a Form 1098-T from the college or university that they go to, they can get a maximum annual credit per eligible student. So if you have more than one student in school, of up to $2,500. And you can also get, because of that, part of that is refundable. Refundable is a beautiful thing. Do you know what refundable means, Gary?
Means you get your money back.
Cash in your pocket.
Nice. Okay.
That is the best of all worlds. So these days, when we do tax returns, we want to check to see if it's better for the student to file for the American Opportunity Credit, or it is for the adult parent or guardian to file for it. So here's some of the things that need to be in place to be an eligible student for what we call AOTC. Number one, be pursuing a degree or other recognized education credential. Well, I assume you're probably going to school for a reason, so you can't just claim it. So this actually also includes if you choose to go technical school, maybe you choose to go to like plumbing school or refrigeration school, or maybe you choose to go to be a cosmetologist so you can do nails and cut hair. Those are all examples of different type of schooling. And AOTC can be claimed for 4 years and only 4 years. So if you have a student that is in what we call dual enrollment in high school, I would probably wait on claiming the AOTC, because with dual education or dual enrollment, you just don't pay that much tuition for that. But with tuition rates rising, at many of the public universities to well over $30,000, great opportunity to pick up about $2,500. And so that is also certainly a way that, if your son or daughter needs money for school and you get a tax refund because AOC, sounds to me like they might have a bit of spending money. What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea, actually. Like, does that apply to things like I don't know what you call them. I'd call them craft schools, where you learn how to fix motorbikes or air conditioning. I mean, because that kind of career is kind of underrated and actually can pay very, very well indeed.
Yeah, and one of the trade schools that
Trade
when
schools,
you get
that's what I
out
was
pays
looking for.
very well is actually welding.
Oh, yeah, right, right. Not surprisingly so. Yeah, I'm always kind of surprised that schools don't teach those kind of trades actually, because there's definitely a shortage of them. I mean, it's kind of hard to find anybody nowadays to fix anything or do anything like that.
Yeah, what about
Um,
electricians?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, electricians. Yeah, I know. I've had reason to call electricians a couple of times the last few years, and yeah, they're kind of expensive.
Everything's kind of
Well,
expensive, really.
that's there is that. That is certainly very true. But trades are, there's never been a better time to get into trades, I don't think.
Yeah, so if there's some type of trade school you go to, even including like carpentry school,
Right.
and they will send out a 1098-T. Important to have the T because just a plain old 1098 is for mortgage interest, but a 1098-T, they can get a tax credit for that. So, I mean, getting $2,500 off on your taxes is $2,500. So, here's some of the requirements for that. you must be pursuing a degree or other recognized education credential. So if there is some type of credential for being, could be a plumber, could be a carpenter, could be a welder, could be a lot of different things. Um, Chances are you can get a credit for that. Second thing is you have to be enrolled at least half time for at least one academic period beginning in the year. So I think half time is considered actually 6 hours. So many people can reach that half time for one academic period. It's not that hard. 6 hours is really two classes. Not that big a deal, is it?
No, you could almost do that and be working another job. I mean, in fact, you could, couldn't you? So
Yep.
that's so you could do this kind of part time, really.
Yeah. And so the next thing gets down to not have finished the first 4 years of higher education at the beginning of the tax year. Well, that's really getting back to the point that you can only take this credit for 4 years. So if you've gone for higher education for 4 years and have chosen not to take the credit, that could be seen as a big mistake. That could cost you as much as $10,000 that you're giving up. And that's free money just for having gone to a university or college. The next one, not have claimed or the former, what was used to be called the Hope credit, kind of the same thing as AOTC, for more than 4 years. So kind of a double-edged sword there. If you went to education for 4 years and didn't claim the credit, so sorry, you don't get it. And you can only claim it for 4 years. So make sure you don't claim it while your kids are in high school, because that kind of seems to be a waste of money. And the last one, here's the interesting one. Not have a felony drug conviction at the end of the tax year. Um, I've never had someone that actually admitted to that. So
Yeah, the important word is admitted, maybe, but
yeah, there are a couple of them I wondered about, but no felony drug conviction. So if you have a felony drug conviction, you cannot claim the American Opportunity Credit. Very important to know. And so they define some terms there. What's an academic period? Could be a semester, trimester, quarter, could be summer school. Sorry. The school determines what an academic period is. Different schools have different claims for that. So generally, you need to have that 1098-T in hand. And what's also, I think, important to have in hand is a copy of the receipt from the college itself, because that kind of backs up the 1098-T. By having those both together, that kind of gives you an ironclad statement that this happened. So be careful claiming the AOTC. Make sure you are qualified before claiming the credit, and make sure you keep copies of, and this is important, all documents. So that's not just the 1098-T as we talked about before. That is also the receipts from the school. And the other thing you want to think about when you're claiming this credit, how many of you, when you went to school, were required to pay for books? Books is also part of claiming the credit. So while
ah,
the book part may not be on the 1098-T, if you had to buy books for your college or university, you need to be certain that you have those so you can put it on this form, which we call an 8863. So this is how you claim the American Opportunity and the Lifetime Learning Credit. So don't forget books. Don't
qu-
forget fees. Sometimes there's like college fees. Sometimes there might even be transportation fees for riding the bus on the campus. So you need to keep a copy of all those receipts.
would you
Here's another
say?
thing that we don't often think about, the taxpayer ID number. How do we prove you're you?
Social, I guess.
Yeah, so that can be a social security number. That's what it is most of the time, but you need to have a valid tax ID number. If you don't have a valid tax ID number, guess what? They could take the credit away. So be very careful with that. And so earlier we were talking about to get the full credit, your modified adjusted gross income must be 80,000 or less for a single person, or 160,000 or less for married filing jointly. So if your guardians or parents make more than $160,000 per year, probably start time looking for the student to file their own return. It is possible to receive a reduced amount. So there is what we call a phase out period, kind of like we do with IRAs, between 80 and 90,000. If you're single, that credit phases out, and between 160 and 180 phases out for married filing jointly. Of course, if you are above either one of those, so sorry, no credit. So be very careful putting your package together when you're claiming those credits. The next type of credit I would like to talk about is actually called the lifetime learning credit. So let's say you decided to go to graduate school and you've gotten all your AOC credits. The other type of credit you can apply for is called a lifetime learning credit. So the lifetime learning credit, in fact, is the credit that I would use if your children in high school are in dual enrollment. I would go with the lifetime learning credit. The beautiful thing about the lifetime learning credit is there's no limit to the number of years that you can claim it. So unlike the AOC, you can claim this for as many years as you are in college or university. So generally, this credit is sometimes used for undergraduate, but mostly I see it for graduate and professional degree students. So what are my options here? You, your dependent, or a third party pay qualified education expenses for your higher education. So the important thing is if you get one of those 1098Ts and you get a scholarship, you actually have to subtract that scholarship from the gross amount in the 1098T. And I've seen many times that that scholarship is more than the 1098, that gross amount on the 1098T. So if that happens, guess what? No credit. So be careful with that. You, your dependent, or a third party pay the education expenses for an eligible student enrolled at look at this, an eligible education institution. So you probably want to check with the institution that your child is going to see if they are credit eligible. And the last thing, the eligible student is yourself, your spouse, or a dependent you listed on your tax return. This is where that other thing comes into play so much. So if mom and dad make too much money, and they're generally dependent, you might want to file your own tax return. Because if you do, the rule says that if the eligible student is yourself, your spouse, or a dependent, so you're converting yourself from being a dependent to being yourself. Not a hard thing to do. So who is eligible for LLC? Lifetime learning credit. You must be enrolled or taking courses at an eligible education institution, be taking higher education course or courses to get a degree or other recognized education credential, or to get or improve your job skills. So if you're going to take some GED classes so you can get your high school diploma, that doesn't count. So be careful there. And again, you must be enrolled for at least one academic period beginning in the tax year. So again, academic periods can be semesters, trimesters, quarters, summer school sessions, lots of different variety there. And so very much like the AOC, the American Opportunity Credit, this one is phased out as well. So if you make between $80,000 and $90,000 as a single, you won't get the credit. Same if your folks or your guardians make between 160 and 180 and you file joint return, you won't get it. So you can't claim the credit if you're, there's that word MAGI, uh, modified adjusted for gross income. So if you make more than 90 or more than 180 as married filing joint couple, you won't get it. So what kind of information do you need? Just like with the AOC, you need your 1098-T. I would also have your tuition tax statement that shows that you paid the money. So those are important because they go together. Last thing I want to talk about is really there's one other type of education that has to do with it has to do if your parents are in the military. So one of the things you can do if your parents are in the military and they are not going to use the GI benefits, they can use the GI benefits for their dependent children. Did you hear that? For their dependent children, but that is only while mom or dad is still in the military. Once they leave the military, you can no longer take this. And while we're learning about this stuff, let me just add one more thing in that a lot of you should know is when you file your FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid, there's something called the Pell Grant in there. So if your parents or you, if you're filing by yourself, make less than $60,000 a year, you can qualify for a Pell Grant of up to 7,000. I think it's $7,500 a year now. So beautiful thing about a grant, Gary, is you don't have to what?
Pay it back.
You don't have to pay it back.
I love
So
grants.
that's the beautiful thing. So today we've given you a couple different ways that the government can pay for your education, the lifetime learning credit and the American Opportunity Credit. And all you have to do, guess what, Gary, is to file your tax return.
Okay, we're going to do that anyway, hopefully.
Yeah, so I mean, Gary, that's about as easy as it comes.
That's right.
If you want the Pell Grant, you have to file a FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid. And if your income is within the right realm or the right band of income, they'll pay you, I believe, up to $7,500 now.
What is
Great
the
deal.
the maximum you can earn to apply for that? Or maybe you mentioned that. I may
It's
have maybe I
60,
missed
it's 60,000.
for an
If you
individual.
are over 60,000 income, you're not going to get any, not going to get anything.
What about for a couple or it's married couple? Same
Well, it's
same
still
thing. It's
60,000.
still 60. Okay.
Yeah, it's always 60,000.
All right.
So these are some free ways to get some extra money for college. In fact, when we had those days when they were giving out the COVID payments, smart parents actually learned that they could not only get the college thing, but by putting their son or daughter on their own tax return, they could also get those COVID credits. And so that was a significant amount of money. I think it was like 1,800 one year and 600 the other. Why not? Sometimes it's really important when it comes to going to college or getting your kids out on your own is you need to think outside the box. And so I think that's what we've done today, Gary. We've taught some people how to think outside the box. If we're willing to do that, you too can get some extra money for college by filing for these college credits.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
yeah,
That's good stuff. I wonder how many people on here today. We seem to have a lot of people that return for these talks. How many of you have been on one of these before? And obviously, you know that the information changes a little bit, but how many of you have been with us before? Let's see if we get any reactions in the Q&A or the chat here. The Q&A is more private, by the way. It comes directly to us. If you value your privacy, the chat, obviously anybody can see it, but okay, yeah, several of you have hopped into the Q&A there. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we have several people here. I hope you enjoyed this session. It's a little bit different from what we had before. I think I had a quick question for you there in the messages, Scott. Have you seen that?
Not seen it.
No.
What's the question?
Well, the question was actually when you're applying for one of the credits you mentioned earlier, and you said it covers books, a lot of people actually buy used books because they are expensive, obviously. Would that still apply as long as you had a receipt?
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
doesn't say whether the book has to be new or used,
Right. Okay. Because
but the cost of books and fees could even include a parking fee.
okay.
If you go down to like a big state university and need to buy a parking permit.
Well, okay, you'd have documentation of that. I guess a good way to do it is always, if possible, use a credit card. So you've got a receipt for it. Yeah, if you're paying cash, you want to get one. Um, so yeah, maybe that's a good idea. At least everything's documented then. Presuming
Yeah,
credit
so
credit.
my point here is there's lots of different ways for someone who's willing to hustle a little bit that you can get a good portion of your college paid for. So we've talked about a variety of things in the past few months, and today we talked about credits. What's easier than filing a tax return to get I call it, you know what I call it, Gary? I call it a tax scholarship because
Yeah,
that's
nice.
really what it is.
That's excellent. All right,
Yep. The
good.
government is incentivizing you to get an education. So why wouldn't you want to do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a
Yep.
really, it really is an offer you can't refuse. What else was I going to say? We do have a very special offer for you here from Scott, and it only applies to 24 hours after this webinar's finished. So you might want to take advantage of it. Scott normally charges $200 for a consultation assessment. But today, and today only, we're actually going to give you a 30-minute consultation assessment with Scott, normally 200 for just $49 if you want to take him up on that. But you've got to respond within the next 24 hours. And if you do decide to go forward and use Scott's services, which is highly recommended, of course, by us, then the $49 is taken off your bill. So it can actually cost you nothing for the special assessment. And it's a bargain anyway. So if anyone wants to do that, shoot me an email, garyc at eliteprospeakers.com. I will put my email address in there. Let's see, garyc at eliteprospeakers.com, and we will honor that offer for 24 hours after we wrap. Just as an extra, let me just put my number in here as well. As an extra bonus here, we also do have some very good motivational ebooks for you. We have, well, first we have The Art of War. We have Richest Man in Babylon, excellent financial ebook, one of the greats. We have the wonderful Think and Grow Rich as well for you, and Acres of Diamonds. So hang around at the end when we wrap, and you'll see a short survey pop up in your browser. Fill that out, and yeah, it's only about 10 questions. They're all pretty lightweight questions, nothing heavy there at all. But just fill that out, and then you will automatically get sent those 4 free ebooks. And again, if you want to take advantage of Scott's special consultation offer, which will give you the chance to ask the questions you've been burning to ask, and hopefully help point you in the right direction with what you should be doing. Then shoot me an email and I'll set up an appointment for it for you. So that's about it from me. Do you have anything you wish to add, Scott? Or does anybody have any questions?
I would say just happy Friday. Thanks for attending. I hope you learned something about how to get some tax scholarships for your student.
Excellent. And we will have a recording of this. So if anybody wants to get a copy of the recording, if you can just put your email address in the chat right now, we'll make a note and send that over to you when it's processed, which is normally within an hour. So if anybody wants to get a recording of this session, put your email in the chat box and we'll give you a minute or two to do that. Then we'll wrap up. Okay, so thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you to Scott for some valuable information. Appreciate it greatly. And recordings will be available. The offer's available for 24 hours. And yeah, hopefully see you on one of the next one. Oh, Davis, you want to get the recording, right? Okay, I will shoot that over to you. Let me just make a note. Anybody else wants to get a copy of the recording while we're still on here? Chris, okay, no worries. Anybody else? We're going to wrap very shortly. So, okay, we're going to stop recording now and wish you all a great weekend. Thank you very much for being here today. And thank you to Scott for his invaluable knowledge that could save you definitely thousands of dollars. Thank you and goodbye for now.